everybody. Welcome to Underexposed. My name is Phil. I'm your host, and I'm here with Pastor Matt Ornelas.
Hey, guys.
What's up?
What's going on, brother?
So tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Man, so good to be on here with you. I just want to start by saying thanks, man. Really appreciate.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really hard to choose your first interviewee, and I thought, who better than my spiritual father and leader?
Oh, man, it's an honor. It really is. Well, my name is Matt Ornelas, and I'm a church planner. I'm a pastor, father of, not all in that order, but father, a husband, my beautiful wife of 18 years, Trina, and I have 3 kids, Malaya, Selah, and Makeo, and also a musician, music producer, videographer, photographer. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm into a lot of stuff, but
wow. Yeah, it's not a lot that you get to meet people who can do a lot. I've met people that they stay in one field.
Yeah.
I've met people that, this is what they do. And what else can you do?
Right.
And I'm just doing
this.
This.
Yeah, that's it. That's my lane.
It's good to meet someone who's also skilled in different trades.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's sometimes it feels like a curse, but for the most part, I think it's a blessing.
I feel it, man. I feel it. Yeah. And you mentioned your kids' names. I was talking to my wife, and we were talking like, your kids are named exceptionally.
Thank you. Yeah.
Like, what brought you and your wife to name them so uniquely?
Oh man, there's a scripture in the Bible where it talks about how a good name's better to be chosen than great riches.
Yeah.
So we didn't take that lightly in naming our children from our firstborn Malaya. We wanted it to be meaningful, not just something that sounded cool. And I think they sound pretty cool, but we wanted it to be meaningful. So we definitely spent a lot of time looking through names and researching until something really we agreed on a name, and it just felt right. And like with Malaya, it meant freedom.
Cool.
And she's very free. She's quiet natured, but she's very free spirited. And it's funny how their names actually
represent a lot.
Yeah, they are. It's funny. So you gotta be careful when you name your kids. Selah, it's from the Psalms. Means to pause and reflect. And Makeo, it's actually Hawaiian for my name. I wanted a junior, but I also wanted to have his own identity. You know what I'm saying? And
I feel I'm a junior too.
Yeah.
To this day, my dad gets mail that's for me, and I get mail that's for him.
Yeah.
Recently, he was doing his tax. I was helping him do his taxes, and he gives me a piece of paper, and he was like, "I don't know what that's from, but the IRS sent me a check for like $350." And so I was like, "Okay, cool." And then I started reading. I was like, "Wait a minute, the social doesn't match."
Oh my goodness!
I was like, "That's mine, Dad." I was like, "Whatever, you can have it." He's like, "I already spent it." So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So every single one of their names is biblical.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
and you mentioned you also produce music. What kind of instruments do you play?
My primary instrument is piano, the keys. So I do that. I've dabbled with drums, a little bit of acoustic guitar, but keys is my main instrument, my main weapon, my primary weapon.
And what kind of music do you tend to produce more often?
These days, I've always been very eclectic in my interests in music, so it's hard. I love everything except for country, and
right.
Even that's like I've heard some good country songs lately, and I'm like, okay, maybe I have to take that back these days.
Oh yeah.
But initially, I grew up in a family where my mom was very musical and she led worship. And so hearing her listen to, or strum her guitar in our living room practicing new songs was just part of our childhood. And so worship songs, worship and praise songs, that style of music has always been a part of my life. But I actually started out in hip hop. And so, when I discovered hip hop, my life changed,
Oh yeah, that'll do it to you.
Yeah, it will for the good or the bad. But,
I remember I was maybe 10, 12 years old, and my brother was getting into hip hop.
Yeah.
And he always had like Chris Brown in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know your name, but excuse me.
Bringing it back, man.
Oh yeah, way back.
Yeah.
I remember getting into some hip hop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you also talk about I like the way you put it. You said church planter.
Yeah.
And so I was just going to assume you're just the pastor.
Yeah, right.
But I know that a lot more goes into that.
Yeah.
So talk about why you refer to yourself more as a church planter.
And that's a great question. That. Yeah. I think that that is actually, I'm definitely, I'm definitely a pastor, but I think I'm actually, my particular calling, the church planter role is actually first, and I'm pastoring because I had to walk into this church planting call.
Got it.
And we planted before. My whole life, it's all interconnected. The whole entrepreneurial bent in starting, a studio with my wife and the music production, and then starting other businesses along the way. Some didn't make it, some have, and starting churches. But church planting, I'm wired to start things,
Yeah.
Wired to dream things up. And so that's why I say start church planter first. But with that comes the pastoring role, which is shepherding what you planted and taking care of what you planted.
I heard another preacher or another speaker say, pastoring isn't my identity. It's what I do.
That's good.
And so it's not so much as a title as it is a task.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that gave me a different perspective on a lot of pastors, and gave me a whole different level of respect for people that are pastors, because even people that don't have the title can still tend the sheep.
Sure. Absolutely. 100%.
So it's very interesting, man. If you could be remembered for anything, what do you think it'd be?
I think I would want to be remembered as a person who was genuine, that a person who was real, especially about my faith. And most importantly, I think to my family, the people who know me best, that my wife and my kids would know me as someone who was real about my faith. Yeah. And not just my faith, but in a way that I effectively passed it on to them, and that they became authentic and genuine and passionate about the same God that I am.
Yeah.
Being genuine, being real.
That's good.
About that.
That's good. There's not a lot of pastors nowadays. And it's sad to say this, but there's not a lot of pastors who can say that their family also serves.
It's sad. It's true though. Yeah.
And to see that you and your family serve, it's inspiring. Wow. So I do want to point that out and
appreciate say, man.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You did it.
We're still doing it too.
You're still doing it.
Still working at it.
I'm sure there's still time. And but it's something that I know that me as a man, as a father, and as a husband, I do admire that. And it's something that I can say, okay, well, whatever this guy says, I can listen.
Man,
because I can be stubborn sometimes.
I get it. Me too.
And I think when my stubbornness comes out the most is when I see someone who says something that might be true.
Yeah.
But if they're not living it, it's like losing your credentials.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Where's your background on this?
Exactly.
So
exactly
to see that you don't only just tell people like, hey, bring your family.
Yeah.
You also bring your family.
It's funny you said that, because years ago when my kids were little, someone was asking about, I had an idea about a book for parenting. I was a new father, and I didn't have much experience. And I remember I asked, on social media, what do you guys think about this idea as raising sons? I finally had the son I wanted. It's my youngest, and 2 girls and a boy. And someone put a comment on there questioning my experience in that area. And, at the time I was a little off-put by that. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a second. But I kind of get it too. Now, fast forwarding to where we are now, and my kids are a little bit older, and my eldest is 17 now, going to be 18 this year. Still learning. It's a different season for them, but it's not just something you can just talk about. It is something you have to live. And when you walk through that in raising your kids, raising your family, it's a beautiful experience. It's sometimes painful. But when you see the fruit, and to know that my kids are serving, they're in the church, they love serving,
Yeah.
They're mad when they're not involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, thank you, God, you're so good, and I'm just grateful that they want to be around and they're excited about Jesus and
Cool.
they're part of that.
Yeah, it's definitely nice.
Yeah.
And do you think people misunderstand you a lot as far as like when you try to give lessons that they may feel
Hmm.
you may not be qualified to give? Because you are a young pastor.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned you're in your 40s.
Yeah. 42.
42. So you're very young.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would argue and say
Yeah.
inexperienced.
Yeah.
Do you think that people may misunderstand you or misjudge you a lot of the times?
It's really interesting. Early on in ministry, I think maybe when I was a youth pastor, recovering home director, even an associate pastor in my 20s, I was very young. In the movement, I was part of a denomination, not technically a denomination, but that's pretty much what it was. It's probably the youngest licensed minister when I was finally licensed and ordained. But I would say then I had a lot of that. Older guys having trouble with a younger leader. I definitely had some toe-to-toe confrontations with,
I can see that in any field, really.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember when I got into construction and I got pretty good at it, pretty quickly. I learned quickly. And my first time I got promoted to become a supervisor. And I remember going in and being in charge and walking in.
Right.
I felt good, and I walked in, I was like, okay, let's do this, let's do that.
Yeah.
And people just looked at me like, who are you? And these were dudes that they were in their 40s and 50s, and they were just looking at me like, how long you been doing this?
Right.
Well, I have this title, and they'd be like, yeah, forget about your title. Like, how long have you been doing this? And so they'd get mad, and they're like, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years, and I've been doing it this way. And I remember getting mad, and I'd clap right back, and I'd be like, well, you've been doing it wrong for 20, 30 years. That's why we have all the, and I'd get all into that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Let's talk about your accomplishments.
Okay.
What are some of your favorite personal accomplishments and life stories?
Oh, there's so many. Honestly, we just touched on it.
Yeah.
Having my family involved with me in serving God, involved in our church, a new church plant, and they're all in. They're there week in, week out, doing multiple things, passionate about it, wanting to be there. I'm going to have to say that's probably my greatest achievement thus far in life. And if it stays that way, it will always be, I think, for me. In other ways, I think, being able to go through a pandemic where we started the church that we're pastoring right now, the Father's House, Natomas, 3 weeks before everything shut down in Sacramento. And a year and a half, we could not find a place to gather, to meet, to have in-person services. We were online. And that was really rough for a lot of people, for everyone, the whole world. But for us as a baby church, it was especially difficult. And there was many times where I wasn't so sure if we would be able to push through that.
Right.
But coming out, and this is totally God's grace.
Right.
He's done a lot of miracles, but just being able to tough that out and overcoming a lot of the thoughts of quitting or being a failure, and then getting to where we are now, and we just launched two services now.
Yeah,
coming back home.
By the way, it worked out great the first time.
Man.
I heard a lot of people were talking and saying like they were surprised at the outcome. Like, of course, people had faith and expected people to show up, but it exceeded what people expected.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as for being in the church, we've seen, I think, more people commit their life to Christ than the last half of the year before.
Yeah.
And we're only in our second month, almost in the third month of the new year. And so that is incredible. There's so many things that happen right now. And at one point, I wasn't sure if we could bounce back from that, and to see that happen now. And that's totally God. But at the same time, I'm like, I know you put some stuff in us, in our team, in me, that a little bit of grit.
Yeah.
And I can't take credit for a lot of it except for just holding on to him, holding on long enough.
Yeah.
So, but in that, I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, not just for myself, but from our team who pulled through that season.
I like the word you use, grit. A lot of people don't use that word. And I guess it's more about how well you're able to keep getting up, not necessarily how well you get up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But you can get up slowly one time and then get up fast the next
so true,
time.
Man.
And
yep.
The fact that you keep choosing to, even when it feels like you're failing.
Yeah, you feel like Rocky sometimes, man. You're in there in the ring.
I've been there myself plenty of times, man. And that grit,
yeah,
I feel is what defines a lot of men and a lot of women, where it shows a lot of integrity and a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's something a lot of people need.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time. I mean, there's so many things that I think people don't see realized, whether it's a dream, a business succeeding, a marriage, just because they didn't have enough grit to outlast a momentary struggle or, seasons of difficulty. But sometimes you just got to keep waking up and stepping out and getting out of bed till something shifts.
So let's talk about influencing. So what are some of the biggest influences on your life? Like, have you had mentors? Have you had people that you can say, you know what, these people, if it wasn't for them?
Yeah.
So who are some of your most important mentors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I right off the bat, I'm going to say my mom and dad. They raised me in the faith. They raised me as a little kid in the church. They were I felt they were very authentic and real about their walk with God, their commitment to Him, to His church, and they were by no means perfect, but they were genuine enough for me to say, okay, this is the real deal, and I want it for myself.
Wow.
And so going to church and coming home to parents who are the same in and outside of the church, I think hearing stories and from people who have not had that experience, I realized it was a real blessing for me. I had a blessing that not everyone has to see that level of consistency without being perfect. And so they're definitely, teaching us values and morals. And my dad, from his work ethic, being a hardworking Mexican man and just providing for his family and also loving God. And he planted a church himself and pastored for over 20 years. And my mom at the same time, also, she homeschooled us into high school and sacrificing, maybe greater luxuries and more money and success. And they're both sharp people, but they both felt and agreed that for us, they felt that it was the best thing for us to be educated by her rather than a secular institution. And so I'm really grateful for that. So they by far have had the most influence on me in my life. But along with them, my pastor, Dave Patterson from the Father's House, Vacaville, has, in the amount of time that I've known him for the past several years, he has probably done more for me in many ways than most people that I've known. Just sheer believing in God's purpose and call for our lives and supporting that and backing that up, and not just being words, and modeling what strong but humble leadership can look like. Like, it isn't, they don't have to be in conflict. You can actually be an incredible leader and not be full of yourself and arrogant. I think with him, I got a glimpse of somebody, mega church, multiple campuses, worldwide, I think worldwide, at least national, but worldwide influence, campuses in prisons all through California. It's incredible. Yet he's very unassuming and generous and kind and down to earth. And he's probably one of the greatest mentors I've had in the kingdom, especially. And of course, we had mentors in business and coaches, people that we brought on for a season. Even now in ministry, I have people who are kind of like coaches that I bring in, and they speaking to me, and I'm always looking to learn from others. So, but those are some key ones, man.
Cool. Who would you say is the person you go to immediately when things are down?
when things are down.
Yeah.
Definitely my wife. There's Jesus in my wife.
Yeah.
And my wife's so great, man. She's definitely the one I tell all my thoughts to. I run my ideas by. She'll tell me if it's a great idea or if it's like,
Right.
She's my sounding board. I talk to her so much, and then I have some peers in who are also pastors of other churches that when it comes to personal or even ministry, I'm kind of stuck. I can run to them, and I'm grateful for those guys who provide that relationship and support for me in those ways.
Cool. So now we can get into the meat of it.
Okay, so let's go.
Hopefully we can get vulnerable and,
all right, let's
transparent.
Do it. I'm ready.
What was one of your biggest failures as a pastor or as a music producer or as a family man? What's one of your biggest failures in your lifetime, and what did you learn from that experience?
Wow, there's so many. Maybe I can pick a quick one from each of those facets of my life. The first that comes to mind is, let me touch on the pastor piece. Several years ago, I had taken over a 25-year-old, something like that, church, and it was in decline. It was struggling, and we saw growth. We doubled, tripled really fast, grew really fast, all within a year span, and it felt like a move of God, like a revival. The church is booming. It became very multicultural, reaching a lot of younger people as well and families. But there was a lot about taking over a church that already existed that I didn't have the experience and wisdom in doing at the time, because I'd never walked down that road. It's very different from starting something from scratch.
Yeah.
When you start from something from scratch, it's like it's your baby. You raise it how you want. But when you adopt someone else's kid, it's it comes with baggage. It comes with daddy issues, trauma, all that stuff. Yeah. And there were some load-bearing walls, I think, that I wasn't prepared for. I would say, and I it depends on how you define failure. I don't think it was so much as a failure overall. I think God used that to get me where I needed to be, what I was called to do. Yeah. Right, which is why we're here right now. But there's things I could have handled better. I could have, especially if I was going to be there long term. I definitely would have been slower. As an entrepreneurial type of church planner, it's like boom, 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 let's go. That's what's the next thing. Where does God want to go? But in a situation like that, you have to be slower. You have to ease people into change, especially big change. Take your time, be patient, build rapport and relationship. And so if there's anything I failed in, it's probably realizing that I had to be slower paced and more patient with people in that season.
Do you think that taking your time with it plays more of a role in equipping the people? Or do you think that taking your time with it is more of a raising a level of expectation?
It's probably all of that. Yeah, I think for what was happening with us in our particular situation, I think I'm naturally a person who's I'm a big picture person, so it's not hard for me to talk about dreams and visions and what could be and how things ought to be. It's not difficult. I just daydream all day. It's kind of how I'm designed. I'm wired, but not everybody gets that. Yeah. And when you walk into something that's pre-existing, that has a culture and has maybe it has its own dreams. I think you have to be cautious, and you don't necessarily, in a church context, you want to do as a leader what God's called you to do, but also realize that you're walking into something and there's things you want to honor. There's things you want to celebrate. Right. You don't just forget the past and all that's been done to bring it to where it is today. And I think a lot of it is relationship. And for me, in a year, I probably had a lot more work to do in terms of building relationship with the established people there, and building just trust and recognizing, okay, what are the sacred cows here that maybe I need to be careful about, and just really make sure I'm clear about what's happening, why we're happening, and setting a pace for that. And then also the equipping. Yeah, people probably need to be equipped and for the growth. I think
Right.
for a lot of people, we experience growth, and the church changed so drastically
Hmm.
that for some it was frightening. They were intimidated by it. It wasn't the church they had been at for 20 years anymore.
Right.
For me, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And it was good. I think,
Yeah.
from a heavenly perspective, yeah, growth, people coming to Christ, more baptisms, all the records broken. But if I was going to lead a church into that, um, for the long term, I think it would have been more relationship building, team building that needed to happen, so they could really grasp and understand what was happening. So I learned a lot. Needless to say, I
Right.
learned a lot in that season.
So, what are some common myths about pastorship that people tend to think or put expectations on you,
Yeah.
and when
Mm.
really it's nothing to do with you? Like, I know,
Oh, this is a good question,
I know that a
man.
lot of people, at least in my field, think that, oh, you do construction and you do plumbing, cool.
Mm.
So my toilet's clogged, and for me, it's like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
nice.
You're right.
Yes, I do
I
construction, and
love that. Yeah. Right.
doesn't mean that I have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do
Yeah.
plumbing, and then that's where my expertise is.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
doesn't mean I have to work with your doo doo
Yeah.
all the time.
I might have to use that
And
analogy
right, right.
sometime,
And
man.
so for me, it's like I put up with a lot of doo doo
Right.
to not put up with doo doo. So
You and I both, man.
and so I'm interested in pastorship and
Yeah,
what comes
yeah.
with that, and what are some of the myths that people tend to believe is your responsibility
Yeah.
when really it has nothing to do with you?
I love it. And I think it's definitely based on their background, church background.
Hmm.
People who come from large churches, and I'm talking about several hundred to thousands, mega church size, and that's their experience, or they grow up in that, or that's where they come to faith, and that's all they know, and then they walk into something that maybe is not that. I think they have a different set of expectations of a pastor or church leaders than someone who grows up in a church of 50 or 100
Hmm.
or less, or maybe even a house church type of deal. So a person who comes from the massive church, they tend to expect more excellence about everything, I think.
Hmm.
Um, I think they expect you to more, I hate to use the word, but I think professionalism, and how
Yeah,
you relate
yeah,
to people. I think they expect you to have more of a level of the business aspects of church, and to be more strategic, right? And
got it.
and
They want more statistics out of
yeah, they
you.
want yeah, and I think there's some good reasons for that. People from a smaller church, maybe uh, a young church, or maybe they grew up in their grandma's church, and it's an organ and a preacher, and
Hmm.
there's people dancing around. Whatever your background,
Right, right,
they have different expectations. I think it's not so much they really don't care about that stuff. They just want to know that pastor's there for everything in their
right,
life, right? Because they're
right.
used to the pastor that they grew up with, who maybe there was only 50 people in the congregation, and
Yeah,
so whenever they called, whenever they had a need, he was the one praying. He was doing the baptisms.
yeah,
He was doing pretty much everything, the counseling, the marriage counseling.
right.
And so I guess it depends on the background. And in our church, we get a little bit of both. People
Right.
from the big, the mid-size, and the small. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of comes from different directions.
Yeah, I can personally say myself too that
Yeah.
I grew up in church.
Yeah.
And so I grew up, my parents came from the Mexican
Yeah.
Apostolic
Mm-hmm.
Organization, and
Mm-hmm.
they had a big role to play in
Right.
building churches and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. So church for me always was a cultural thing,
Mm-hmm.
apart from a religious thing.
Mm-hmm.
So even from other Mexicans in growing up, going to school, I went to public school. I didn't grow up in
Yeah.
private school and stuff.
Right.
So that's somewhere where we
Sure.
can defer.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the things I always noticed is in the bigger churches, there's a lot more expectation.
Mm. Yep.
Things move a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Things are done when you say they're going to be done.
Yeah.
And in smaller churches, it's not that they don't do what they say they're going to do. It's
Right.
more of like, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
There's no rush,
Right.
because there's no
Right.
demand.
Yeah.
I recently heard someone put it this way. They said, denominations or church culture
Yeah.
can be good and bad, but it's not necessarily bad in the sense that it's wrong.
Right.
As he was saying, if you look at it like restaurants, you go to one church and they might not cook your food the way you like. But you don't stop going to restaurants.
Right, right.
You just don't go to that restaurant
That
right
one,
there.
yeah.
And so I like the way he put it, because he was talking more about denominations, and I've met people that come from apostolic, Pentecostal, Baptist, Trinitarian.
Right, right, right.
The list goes on.
Right.
And the way he put it was, it's not that the denominations themselves are bad. Some of them may be a little misguided, but at the end of the day, it's all up to interpretation, and they're doing what they can with what they believe, and they really believe that. And if you really believe the way they do, why don't you live the way you believe?
Yeah.
And so it goes to show that denominations themselves aren't necessarily terrible, but if the food you're eating isn't what you like, it doesn't mean that restaurants as a whole are bad.
Yeah.
You just haven't found the one that cooks the way you like.
It's good. Yeah.
And so for me, I grew up as a kid. I grew up in a 30 to 45 member church.
Yeah.
And so my parents had a lot of expectation on the pastor, and pastor was the first one to you would call when anything bad would happen. You needed prayer. Your mom got sick, or whatever you're going through. And I've also experienced going to a bigger church with 400 plus members, and you got to schedule an appointment with the pastor's assistant to, first of all, do like a visit and talk to the assistant about what you want to talk to the pastor. So it takes a lot to get to him, and so a lot of the times you feel left out. Yeah. And I like that you said that this church is kind of in between. Yeah. And how do you think the differences could be managed for people that take it personal?
So you're saying, like, if someone is coming from a smaller church, they have high expectations, but it's not that.
So if someone from a smaller church comes expecting you to be at their disposal, but you're not. Right. What are some of the lessons you can teach to help them understand that, there's other people in place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very much cultural too, because I've also been in churches where the pastor was everything. And I guess I count it a blessing that I've been able to experience all sorts of different sizes of church. Coming from Vacaville, that's thousands of people. Multiple services, multiple locations. And so, and that was really my first time really being part of something that massive. Yeah. With my dad, we were under 200 over there. And, when church planning phase, even less. And then I've been in churches that for seasons as a kid was like 500, 800, 1,000, it just depended. So I've been in all sorts of different places and seen the strengths and the weaknesses of all these different sized congregations. I think for us, a big part is understanding what your church is called to do. What's the vision of that church? So if people walk into our church, we do a thing called Discover. We walk them through. It's kind of their next steps. Once they've decided this is where they want to call home, they want this to be their church home. We encourage them to go through Discover, and they learn about our vision and values. And they quickly, and even maybe in my preaching, they learn quickly about God's heart for our house. And that's one where we're always looking for ways to reach people who are far from God, who are not churched. We have a vision to multiply, send out other campuses and church plants in the future, which means on some level or another, there's going to be expansion, whether it's here internally or sending out, and we're constantly growing. And I do my best to start with our core leaders and tell them and empower them so that they know that, hey, I may we may be pastors. I may be the pastor here, my wife and I, but we are not Jesus.
Yeah.
And we're very limited in Jesus' model. And I always try to point them back and teach them. We had to do this for a whole year, I think, with our team, because there were, our first year, a full year after the pandemic, we're getting people coming back, and we definitely had some different expectations that were people had coming in, and some people would feel like, oh man, I don't have access to them whenever I need them, and others it's like others walked in, they came from other settings where it's like they didn't have direct contact with the pastor, fine, as long as they had a small group, and they're like, as long as I got community, I got people, and people who were a few steps ahead, I'm good. And so I think just communicating that well and effectively, but also I think if a church wants to grow, if a pastor has a vision to see his church grow, to constantly be reaching new people, evangelizing, and then you got to start speaking that language and empowering people. Because I know a lot of pastors who don't empower people to do anything. It's kind of like they're afraid to trust people with ministry because they're the only one who can do it, right?
Yeah. I've been to plenty of those churches too, where the pastor just they trust their family.
and that's a big reason why it's not that I don't love people or love to hang around people. I do everything I can to spend time with them in a healthy way, but I never want to be the person that they look to be their savior, their Messiah, or that I'm the only one who can minister to them. Because what will happen when I'm gone? What happens when God leads them somewhere else? What happens when, if I'm sick? What if I haven't equipped disciples? I'm not doing what Jesus did. Jesus spent most of his time with 12 so that they could go and spend their time reaching the world, and that's kind of our motto. It's like, gather a few, and we teach our leaders that too. All of you guys should be having a few that you're pouring into, because the way we're going to reach more people is actually by pouring our best into a few.
I was actually talking to Alec from your church. And we were talking about leadership and the different types of leaders, and some people are meant to lead 12. But then there's the 12 that lead the many. And so what kind of leadership do you think is more important? Or not necessarily more important, because I think they all play an equal role. But what do you think is lacking in today's society as far as the types of leadership?
In the church, or just in
the church, and maybe even in society, or just in general?
I think society, I think just trustworthy leadership. I think in society there's a huge distrust towards leadership right now. And it has a lot to do with politics and how things have gone during the pandemic, and it's been going on for a while, but I think it's at an all-time high, a distrust for leadership. And I just think authentic, genuine, trustworthy people who just care about people, and it's not about power, it's not about self-gain. I think just in general. Now, that can also happen in the church for anybody, because we're all human, but it shouldn't be happening. And I think in the church, I think the church is a little bit different. I think what's lacking in church leadership right now, again, is just we need to empower people. We need to make heroes out of others instead of trying to be the hero all the time. Because we can get into this mode where we find, and I think this is another conversation, but we find our identity in our role as pastors or leaders in the church. And so when our identity is rooted in what we do, anything or anyone that threatens that or does that really well, we can because of our inadequacy or our lack of confidence in who God's called us to be, our insecurities, we can actually repel them instead of empowering them, because we feel like we're less necessary, less important, less valuable. And that's not, Jesus gave ministry, he gave authority away. And so I think there's a need for actually empowering people. I'm not just saying throw power titles away, but spend time with people, invest in them, call out the greatness in them, and leave a legacy, man. I think the greatest thing that any leader can do is look back in time at their lives and see a trail of people who are doing greater things than themselves. And I think that's something that we probably need all around, across the board, but in society, but also in the church.
You mentioned about leadership. There's people that put their identity on what they do.
Yeah.
I've found personally that when you do that and you meet someone who does it better, not only does it repel them,
yeah,
it also messes up your identity.
It does.
Because you're rooting yourself in something.
I've been there.
And I know that this happened to me when it came to music. You know, and I've been a bass player since I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And it's funny enough, I started as a guitar player. And when I went to my pastor at the time, my dad was like, go talk to him. You know, you want to play guitar and all that. So I went and told him. He was like, oh, nice. We've been needing a bass player. And so I was like, no, I've been learning guitar. He was like, that's cool. But actually, he's like, God has told me that you're going to be playing bass.
Wow.
And I was like, but I'm not learning bass. I'm learning guitar. And he was like, you got 2 months to learn how to play bass.
Wow.
You got this.
Man. And you never turned back.
And so I remember going to my parents like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they were like, well, I mean, we did buy you a guitar. You might as well practice with that. And well, I gave it a shot.
Sure.
You know, and for years, I played upset.
Wow.
You know? Just mad that it wasn't a guitar.
Right.
At the time, of course, you're young. I did it. I learned guitar because I was trying to impress this girl.
Yeah.
and so
that's how you do it.
I felt like, man, she's never gonna talk to me now. And what's funny is that although people were interested,
chicks dig guitars.
It didn't take away from the interest of this musician, church, you know, churchy musician guy.
Yeah.
But my mindset was rooted in what I did, and I wanted to be a guitar player.
Right.
And the fact that I wasn't doing that, and there was other guitar players that were just better. Yeah. And they were in their 40s, and they were just way more experienced. Yeah. It took away from my own identity. Right. And so, although I was doing it to get a girl or to impress somebody, like it took away from my identity, and even being able to see the fact that there was plenty of people out there, you know, just looking. And I just was so mad at my own identity and what I'd become. But then years into that, I started actually falling in love with bass playing. And so I took classes, failed them, and then got on YouTube and succeeded.
Hey, YouTube University.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I started realizing, like, man, this is cool. But then I started getting into like these musicians that talk about, like, if you've never lived anything, then what are you even playing? Wow. Because if you're playing, it's because you have something to say, and you're saying it with music. And so if you have nothing to say, if you've never lived anything, what are you playing for? Wow. And so that's when I started excluding my identity from bass playing. And so that's when I feel like I actually started getting better. You know, I played at a beginner, almost intermediate level for like 6 years. And then the minute that switch flipped, I exceeded to like intermediate pro. Wow. And so I do feel like what you're saying about, you know, leadership and identity, like all of that is rooted in the same thing. Like,
yeah, absolutely. You know, 100%, man.
So let's talk about some of your challenges right now as a pastor. What are some of the biggest challenges you're facing in your church right now, and how are you tackling it?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not uncommon. We got a lot of things going. The church is growing. As I mentioned, we just launched the second service, and now this whole new expression that we call House Fire is launched, and we're getting a really good response early on in it, and just how God's using that. So small groups, you know, the church is growing overall. But someone once told me that there's two things that you're never going to have enough of in church and in ministry. One is you're never going to have enough people serving, and you're never going to have enough money. Like even as you grow, it'll always be like that. And for good reason, because if you have any sort of vision, if God's given you any vision for that thing, then it's always going to require more. It's going to be growing and expanding, and it'll require more resources. And so that's definitely, so far I found that to be true for us. It's always like, okay, we got tons of vision, but Lord, how are we going to make this happen? And, you know, he's definitely been faithful. We have our ups and our downs, but It's always top of mind. Okay, how are we going to build the team? How are we going to
Right.
strengthen them, get them healthy, but also reproducing, getting more people serving and fulfilling their assignment and roles in the
Right.
body of Christ, and also how we're going to continue to cultivate a culture of generosity where people find joy in giving towards the kingdom and the mission and investing in spiritual things and seeing the fruit of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always up there on the list and on our prayer list,
Right.
and working on that. So I would say that's the challenge. Other than that, time management is always a challenge, when you're navigating and just juggling family.
Right.
You have multiple kids. I was going to say multiple wives, so we don't do that. But we got one wife, one woman, man, three kids. As you have two kids as well, and then we have these are some businesses going
Yeah.
on, and then we have ministry. It can be let's just say some days we're pulling out our hair trying to make it work.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably one of the big challenges is just trying to make sure. I don't really believe there's anything as balance. I think it's just rhythm. You try to develop a rhythm and keep working on that. And
I do feel like a lot of people don't really shine enough light on the fact that pastors in general do a lot of the work themselves.
yeah.
And so a lot of people, like, I used to be one of those, like,
Yeah.
I grew up in church, but I was never that involved.
Right.
Where
Right.
I didn't come from a pastoral family.
Yeah.
I had uncles and relatives that were pastors, but I wasn't
Mhm.
an immediate family member where I
Yeah.
saw the technicalities you
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah.
And my wife was. And so she's always talking about they need help with this and they need help. Maybe we could serve here. Maybe we could serve there.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I'm just like, yeah, but they got it. And then she's like, they don't.
She knows.
Trust me, like they need the help. We'll sign. I'm like,
man.
oh, okay, well, I didn't know.
She's
And
watching me on the scenes, man.
like she's got the mindset of someone who's been in a pastoral family,
Wow,
and I
yeah.
feel like that's something that a lot of people don't shine enough light on.
Yeah.
Though pastors tend to do everything
Yeah.
because maybe there's not enough people who
Yeah.
can, and the people who can aren't interested
Right.
or
Right.
they don't know they can.
Right.
And so I feel like maybe that's something that we could touch on, and
Yeah.
the types of activities that a lot of people don't understand, that it takes a lot out of you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
so what are some of those activities, or what are some of those things like planning and event coordination that
Yeah.
people don't kind of see where it all comes from?
Yeah, a lot of people I think when people think of pastors, a lot of times all they think is what they see on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
that it's just preaching a sermon, 30, 40 minutes or whatever that is in their
Yeah.
context. And that's the rest of the week. They're just sleeping in and eating cake or donuts and sipping on coffee, Netflix
Yeah.
in it. That's just a small fraction of
Mhm.
what the role consists of. It's a great part of it. It's probably the most fun part, I would say.
Right.
But it's definitely not anywhere near the whole deal for.
If you could put it in like a
Yeah.
percentage of
Yeah.
things pastors do,
Yeah,
what do you think the percentage would be as far as preaching goes?
10%,
10%.
at least for me, and that's with sermon prep.
Mhm.
And for me, I usually average 10 to 15 hours a week just in prepping my messages. Some guys go longer than that. I don't know how they do that with other stuff to do,
Right.
but that's definitely. And then the other part is, and it's different for each pastor. And I think some are missing it because they're putting 50 hours into a message, and I'm not against that, but especially as a church planner, your most as I hate to say it, but the most important thing is not the message you're going to preach. The word of God is always important.
Yeah.
But having this 3-point sermon with the best stories, and we of course want to give excellence, but when you're starting something, I think your priority is like, you got to build a core of leaders.
Yeah.
Because if you don't early on build a core of leaders, then you're going to struggle to grow. You're going to be always doing everything on your own.
Yeah.
2, it's going to become a culture. It sets in where it's just, again, a church where pastor does everything.
Yeah.
And it'll always be a cap when you're the only one leading the show. And it's just kind of like you're the pastor Matt show. And I don't like being the center of attention, really. I never
The
have.
great adventures of my pastor.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
but so yeah, man, I think that it's something to definitely I try to pay attention to, and there's so much more to it than just preaching on Sunday.
Cool. What are the other fields you feel like
Yeah,
pastorship? If you could say like 10% is
yeah,
preaching,
yeah,
and the other 90% is split amongst
yeah.
discipleship,
hmm
and what other things?
Discipleship, and I guess I would include training leaders in that.
Hmm.
If I'm working with people and personally, it's because one, I see something in them,
Hmm.
and it usually has to relate to leadership.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily so, uh, you know, um, we need people who are serving in simple things, but I'm not the one training for that.
Right.
My call is to reproduce leadership in people so that they can keep reproducing leaders. And we have people at different levels in our church that are training. But so it's definitely a lot of time. Every week I'm with my leaders, at least a couple hours,
Cool.
pouring into them, sharing culture, vision, our heart, what we sense God doing, praying with them, doing one-on-ones. So there's a lot. We have our team meetings, we have our team leads, but then I'm meeting with potential leaders, which is another tier of
Right.
people who are kind of not official, but they're coming up.
Hmm.
And then I do one-on-ones periodically with our department leaders, just check on them, see how they're doing, do some coaching, give some feedback, hear their heart, see where they're at, pray for them, minister to them. That's really important. And it's something I want to be doing more with them,
Right.
because our team contributes so much, and they're a great team of leaders. But then there's also, there is the event planning part. There is the which, I'm not really big on I'd love to have somebody else who would take that on, and I just say, here's
Right.
the vision. What are we going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we make this happen? Someone who can just execute on it. So, and we're still building that. We got some people coming up, but there's definitely that, especially as a church plant, man, because everything we do, not everything, but most of the things we do, event-wise or big services we do, it's thinking about how we're going to reach people who are far from God.
Right.
How are we going to win them to Jesus? And so we need to plan budgets, and we need
Right.
to plan out the details, and follow-up systems, and
Oh, yeah.
all the stuff.
Yeah, I was actually impressed when we started, my wife and I, when we started going to the church, we were both impressed at how genuine everything felt.
Yeah.
And we've been to hundreds of churches,
Yeah.
and just visiting or
Yeah.
just hearing about and actually
Yeah.
going. And so a lot of the times that some we notice is a lot of the people, when it comes to hosting, when you walk in the door, it feels
Yeah.
very scripted.
Mm.
Hello, welcome to so-and-so church.
Yeah.
God bless you. Would you like
Yeah.
us to help you find a seat? Like, it's almost like they're
Yeah.
reading. And so
Yeah.
something that we noticed when we came here is people were genuinely interested in us. And
Oh.
it didn't take much for us to feel like we're actually wanted here,
Wow. Yeah.
And of course other churches want people there, but it's a lot easier to get people in the door, but it's a lot harder to keep them in.
Yeah. It's
It's
true.
it's a lot harder to keep people
Absolutely.
engaged.
Absolutely.
And so, which brings me to my next point, like, what are some of the things that churches can do more often to keep people engaged?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that we're still learning,
Mhm.
I think we're so blessed in this season, even with the challenges of ministry. There always be some sort of challenges to deal with and face. But I can to be able to be honest and say we're growing, and to mean that, and to see people are getting baptized, committing their life to Christ every week. We just had 5 baptisms today at the time of this recording, and 2 of those were last minute. It wasn't even
Right,
planned. And 2 services going fairly strong. And for the
Yeah.
first time us doing that as a church, launching a new service. I think one is community is huge. I think people are, especially now in the world we live in now, post pandemic, they're hurting for community, genuine, authentic relationships where they actually have people to be cared, who care for them, like
Right.
you're talking about, and that they can care for and share life with.
Yeah.
I think people are looking for more than just an institution or organization or rituals or just something to do a church to attend. They want to be part of a community, people who can care, someone they can
Right.
text when they need prayer or they need to talk to, or someone they can have coffee with, they can have laughs. We're doing this right now, but it's there's
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of chemistry already, and you know,
Yeah.
in our church and in our families, and I think it part of that you're saying you felt it was genuine is we were also very intentional about who we brought into our core leadership team.
Yeah.
They're by no means perfect. I'm not perfect, but I don't know about you, but um, I have to be working with people I like
Oh
and
yeah.
who like me, man. Not that I won't ever deal with
Yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah.
or sometimes you. But as far as if we're gonna build something that's heavily about community, and it's
Yeah.
a body, a community, a family, a community of people that revolves around Jesus, then people have to actually care about each other, love
Yeah.
people, like people,
Yeah.
and I think I can confidently say that about our team leads is that they actually they love people.
Oh yeah. This is
And
something that we noticed too. Like it wasn't just about, oh, you're here at church now. Like,
yeah,
let's make it all about
yeah,
church.
yeah,
One of the things that happened to us is like immediately, like 2-3 weeks into it, we got invited to a Super Bowl party, and we thought it was going to be packed with all these people, and no,
just
it was
hanging
just
out.
us and another family and maybe a
Yeah,
couple friends of theirs,
yeah,
and they were just genuinely trying
yeah,
to just enjoy time with us,
yeah.
and it had nothing to do with church.
So good, man.
And so
That's
to me,
awesome.
that talked a whole lot, because
Yeah.
talking about, I don't care for sports.
Did you tell them that?
Yeah, like I was like, I'm honestly here for you guys. Like we
That's
enjoy
awesome. I
being
love
around you
it,
guys. You guys
man.
are cool, and I don't know anything about
Yeah,
football.
yeah.
I don't know anything about sports in general. Like you could talk about sports all day, and I'll nod my head like, wow.
I'm actually surprised. You're a good sized
Oh yeah,
man,
and
a big
I
strong
heard
guy.
it. I heard it my whole life. Just I had coaches beg me to
I
join the
bet,
teams,
man.
and I never did because I never got it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it never made sense to me
yeah.
personally.
Not
But
good.
I still hung out because, babe, we got invited somewhere.
So cool.
And then so like all these people
Love
have
it.
kids, and our kids can have friends, and,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
we did
yeah.
it, and
Close in age too, huh?
yeah, and so we hung out,
Yep.
and it had nothing to do with, oh, are you guys new to church,
Yeah.
or are you guys?
Yeah.
It was just genuine. Let's have fun.
I love that, man.
And so to us as a family, that meant a lot, because we have friends too that,
Yeah.
of course, we want to invite to a church and stuff like that. But personally, in our views, I grew up where my parents were always like, you're the church.
Mm.
And so if you invite people to church, you're inviting them to your home.
Wow.
And so how are you going to invite people to a building,
Yeah.
and let the pastor do the discipleship or
Yeah.
whatever, when he's not even their friend? You are.
Wow.
Like, so to us, to invite people to a church building
Yeah.
has always been very,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because we don't feel like they belong there,
Yeah.
because we feel like they do.
Yeah.
But it's not until they've been around us where we express Jesus through our life,
Yeah.
love,
Mm.
and care,
Yeah.
friendship,
Yeah.
where then people are like, hey, where are you every Sunday?
Yeah. Yeah.
We go to church.
Right.
Oh, you guys, really? Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, how come you guys, don't do things the way everyone else does? We don't believe it, or it's just not what we do.
I see.
But you're okay if we do?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean,
Yeah.
it's your life. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but
Yeah.
if you ask me what I believe, I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have friends that they come to me,
Wow.
and friends that have said, I'm never going to church,
Wow.
never stepping foot in. And they don't even know they've been in my house and they've been in church.
Wow.
And my wife and I, like, we pray over these people. We love them.
Yeah, that's
We
great.
express everything we can.
That's
We've encouraged people to end up wanting to go to church.
Yeah.
And even though some of these people aren't in our neighborhood, or we don't live in the same city anymore,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
we've been able to lead people to a church. Like,
That's
hey,
great.
you're
Wow.
from so and so. Like, there's a church there.
That's
Give that
awesome.
a try. And people end up looking for community more than they look for a building.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, community doesn't mean a building full of people.
Yeah.
community can mean friendship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so maybe one of those things that we can encourage people to do is just be the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. That's good.
So let's talk now about your greatest message.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap things up in a bit. How did God first reveal himself to you?
Yeah, you know, growing up in a Christian home, we were in church as far as I can remember, but I just remember I was 7 years old and we had this guest speaker come. It was a special kids service that they did. He was an evangelist and he painted pictures as he preached. And I remember he preached a message and he painted this picture of a guy with his luggage getting left behind, and it was like Jesus was leaving, and the plane. It was like a plane, but he was using it to illustrate the fact that Jesus would come back one day, and some would be left behind. And I just remember thinking as a kid, man, I don't want to be left behind. You know, I want to go with Jesus when he comes. And then he gave us an opportunity to hear the gospel and surrender our lives to Jesus. And he said, if you want to do that, I want you to come forward to this altar. And I just remember me and my brother and my cousins and a bunch of other kids just ran to the altar. And that was the first time the simple message of God's love made sense to me, 7 years of age. It wasn't this profound experience, you know. I didn't see the third heaven or, you know, angels flying around or the glory of God and lights everywhere. It was just a simple message, simple picture, and it translated. It made sense to me at that age, and I just knew at that moment I want to give my life to Christ. I want to follow Jesus. And just growing up, that seed stayed with me. You know, I went through my teenage years. I was never too out there. Definitely was never perfect. I had my own struggles along the way, but I never lost my love for Christ. You know. And I think that I always go back to that one moment as a little kid. Simple message. You just never know where simple word of encouragement or simple Sunday school teaching or a podcast or a YouTube sermon, whatever it is, a conversation, you never know what's planted in someone's heart through that. And
for me, I was a late bloomer. I grew up in church, but I didn't really care for it.
Yeah, you're like, I
was like, I was mainly atheist at heart because I didn't believe.
Yeah.
I went because my parents went.
Yeah.
I believed because my parents believed, but I didn't really believe, you know, and I had this wishy-washy kind of attitude towards it. At church, I was one person, and I'd go to school and I'd be another, and then I'd go to work and I'd be another, and then around my family, I was different.
Right.
And so to me, it was very like, it took me a while before I realized, holy doo-doo. This stuff is real.
It's real, man.
Like, I had a moment of realization. I think I was 17 at the time.
Wow. Okay.
And I was already baptized.
Okay.
I was baptized when I was 15.
Yeah.
I did it because all the other kids did it, and I didn't want to do it alone.
Be left out.
Right, and all the other people in church were also like, you guys getting baptized?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's that? They're gonna dunk you in some water, and you got to cry a little bit when you get out. And so I was like, okay, like
I cry.
And so, you know, that was my baptism at the time.
Yeah.
And years into it, I nothing changed. You know, a lot of people talk about, oh, you know, this changed, and I noticed this, and I never had that experience. So I was numb to the Spirit moving around me.
Yeah.
And although I grew up in church and I saw people falling, people talking in tongues, people, you know, running around the church and the Spirit revival, like all this kind of stuff that people, I knew that all these terms meant people just got a little crazy. And so
they do that sometimes.
And so for me, it was hard to believe.
Yeah.
It was hard to like, it's just people, you know.
No.
I would always think to myself until one day, like, I remember going to this youth camp, and then the preacher that they brought to the camp started teaching the kids about.
Yeah.
He was just giving a message.
Okay.
About being used and how real God is, and if you would just allow Him to use you,
Yeah.
you could do things you've never done before.
Mm.
And I was so intrigued by the way he put it together.
Oh.
Not necessarily because I believed in God, but because I liked the way he said it. And I believed him not because it was what I believed,
Right.
but it was the way he said it.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? And so I actually closed my eyes one day, and during that same altar call, he called people up and he's like, all right, just, if you've never talked in tongues before, if you've never given your life to Christ, blah, blah, like, let's just pray. And so I remember praying, and I was like, all right, dude in the sky that my parents talk about all the time. If you're real, fine.
Yeah.
And I remember having this moment of actual genuine curiosity. Like, maybe he is real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Maybe my parents are crazy. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And I remember doing this prayer, and nothing happened. And so then they were getting ready to like dismiss people. People were already talking in tongues and stuff.
Yeah.
And people were hungry. Bunch of kids, of course. You can't.
Of course.
And so all the kids in the back were hungry. All the kids in the front were crying. And I was in the middle, kind of left with this decision. Like, what do I do?
Right.
And I looked at myself and I was like, well, I'm not going to lose any weight. So let's go to the front and see what happens. I remember praying and asking God to actually use me.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not going to leave here until everyone else leaves here.
Yeah.
Because I want to be used. And if you don't use me, you're not real. And I remember that was the last time I ever tempted God.
Wow.
Because I remember closing my eyes, and by the time I opened them, I was talking in tongues. I had a piano in front of me. I was leading worship with other singers. And I was completely thrown up. When I blinked, I was now playing drums. And the preacher was playing the piano. And
what in the world?
And so this kind of went on till like midnight.
Yeah.
And I remember like, wow. All right. My parents aren't crazy. It feels weird to say because I grew up for the majority of my life feeling like it's just people just go to a church because they feel the need to be around other people.
Yeah.
And they act out because if they don't, people are going to think they don't believe.
Yeah.
And so then finally experiencing something like that for myself scared the heck out of me. And so I lived the next few years kind of like, all right, well, I'm not going to touch that anymore. and that was the first time I feel like I experienced God. Wow. And no matter what I did from then, I could never deny the fact that God was real.
Man.
As much as I wanted to deny it.
Yeah.
As much as I denied it to friends.
Incredible.
It was an experience I couldn't deny to myself.
Man.
And so here I am now, like,
man, look where you are.
A year married with 3 kids, and we all go to a church and we're happy and we're finally feeling fulfillment.
So good,
in life and stuff. And there's all kinds of stuff that we could go into.
That's amazing stuff. Wow, what a story.
Yeah, so
incredible.
I feel like it's a good time here to kind of end. Yeah. So let's promote your church. Where can our viewers find you?
Yeah, I mean, we are located in Sacramento, California, in the Natomas area, that neighborhood. And so you can go to our website for more information, tfhnatomas.church, and you'll have our service times and our address on there. We meet every Sunday, 10 a.m., 11:45 a.m., and we're having a great time loving God and loving people. And anyone out there who wants to check us out, we'd love to have them come by.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, God bless you. See you all later. Peace out.
Take care, guys.